When Cancer discovers the lie, it is never just about the lie itself. It is about the sacred bond that has been torn apart, the emotional thread that once tethered two souls now severed by betrayal. Cancer, ruled by the moon, is not naive. Their trust is not freely given. It is earned, guarded, and deeply sacred. When that trust is shattered, what breaks is not just the image of the liar, but the quiet inner world that Cancer had carefully built around that person. In that instant, something ancient awakens in them, something both sorrowful and fierce. The betrayal of a Cancer is not met with theatrical rage or impulsive vengeance. It is met with silence so cold, it echoes across lifetimes. That silence is not emptiness. It is the sound of oceans withdrawing before a storm. It is the calm before the rise of a tide so mighty it cannot be withstood. Cancer retreats not to escape, but to gather, to feel, to remember, to trace every detail, every false smile, every word twisted into manipulation. In the sanctuary of solitude, they confront the truth with raw honesty, even if it hurts, because they would rather live in pain than in illusion. Lies strike at the core of what Cancer holds dearest: emotional authenticity. To lie to a Cancer is to poison the very wellspring from which their loyalty, compassion, and devotion flow. Whether it was a lover's betrayal dressed in false promises, a boss dangling dreams like bait, or a friend who used secrets as weapons, the wound left behind is deep. And yet, it is precisely from that depth that Cancer draws their power. This is the moment when the crab becomes the tide. The same soul who nurtured with unconditional love now learns to nurture themselves with that same intensity. That sacred inner fortress, once built to shelter others, is fortified for their own rebirth. The moon teaches Cancer that all things wax and wane, even heartbreak, even humiliation, even the disillusionment that burns behind their eyes. Through cycles of healing and reawakening, Cancer rises, no longer swayed by illusions but guided by lunar clarity. The liar believes they have won when Cancer walks away in silence. But they have only ignited something unshakable. For Cancer never forgets, not because they are vindictive, but because memory is the marrow of their spirit. They remember to protect themselves. They remember to evolve. They remember so that their compassion is not misplaced again. And once the storm within them subsides, they emerge with eyes that see through shadows, with a heart that knows its own worth, and a soul that cannot be deceived twice. Those who have lied to Cancer rarely understand the magnitude of what they have lost. They misread tenderness for weakness, vulnerability for blindness. They confuse softness with gullibility. But they are left speaking to closed doors, staring into the absence of a presence that once nourished them. Cancer does not beg. Cancer does not plead. They do not strike back with cruel words or elaborate revenge. Their strength is in their withdrawal, in the dignity of their departure, in the way they rise stronger, calmer, more luminous than before. There is no fury more righteous than the silence of a betrayed Cancer. No justice more poetic than their ability to rebuild in the ruins of another's falsehoods. And though they may still feel the echoes of pain, they carry on deeper, wiser, brighter. Because the moon never stays in darkness. It wanes, yes, but it also waxes. It shines again, and so does Cancer. That is why they hate lies. Not because they cannot survive them, but because they must resurrect themselves each time. And that resurrection, though epic and awe-inspiring, is born of a death that could have been avoided. They hate lies because they love truth with every fiber of their being. Because they are made of honesty, of intuitive perception, of emotional integrity. Because they have seen what truth can heal and what lies can destroy. In the end, the liar becomes a shadow behind them, while they walk forward with a soul illuminated by the very light that once guided them into love, and now guides them into freedom. There is a sacred alchemy within Cancer that few can understand until it is tested. Lies, for others, may merely be setbacks or moments to move past with logic or detachment. But for Cancer, whose heart is the very crucible of their existence, deceit is a betrayal not only of trust but of the soul's sacred contract. A lie told to Cancer reverberates through their emotional memory, through ancestral echoes that live in their blood. because Cancer does not just live for themselves. They live for legacy, for meaning, for the emotional continuity of the human experience. Their loyalty is never casual, and their presence in someone's life is never temporary. When this presence is misused, when their emotional investment is exploited, the pain unleashed is tidal, elemental, and transformative. Cancer is ruled by the moon, that ancient orb which never shines with its own light yet commands the tides of the entire earth. Just as the moon governs the rise and fall of oceans, Cancer governs the rise and fall of emotional landscapes. They feel not just for today, but for yesterday and tomorrow. They sense the unspoken, the subtle currents beneath the surface of words and gestures. This is why a lie wounds them so profoundly, because it is not just the falsehood, but the attempt to distort what they already intuitively knew. To lie to Cancer is to insult their wisdom, to underestimate the intuitive fortress they were born with. The liar thinks the deception is hidden, but Cancer felt it long before it was revealed. There is a silent majesty in how Cancer confronts betrayal. They do not seek to humiliate. They do not drag truth through the mud. They rise with the silent confidence of the moon casting silver light upon a stormy sea. They do not retaliate with cruelty, but they withdraw their sacred energy, and that withdrawal is more powerful than any vengeance. It is the absence of the warmth that once nourished, the shelter that once protected, the empathy that once healed. That absence becomes a mirror in which the liar must face themselves. And that mirror is unforgiving because it reflects not only the act, but the consequences. Cancer's departure leaves echoes, not because they made a scene, but because their presence was once a sanctuary, and now it is gone. Beneath their calm, Cancer holds a memory of every betrayal not just from this life, but perhaps from many. They are the guardians of emotional continuity, and through the pain of being lied to, they are reminded of their sacred responsibility, not to those who deceive, but to their own integrity. Every lie they endure becomes another layer of armor around their truth. Not the kind of armor that makes them hard, but the kind that makes them discerning. They no longer pour from their heart without measure. They do not build castles for those who would only use them as temporary shelter. Instead, they become the architect of their own sanctuary, one where only the worthy may enter. In the epic journey of the soul, Cancer plays the role of the nurturer, the protector, the emotional oracle. When they are wronged, the transformation is mythic. The pain becomes a rite of passage. The betrayal becomes the fire that tempers their emotional steel. And though they may mourn the illusion they once believed in, they do not stay broken. They gather the pieces not just to rebuild, but to transcend. What emerges is not just someone stronger, but someone clearer, someone more luminous. The moon, in all its phases, teaches Cancer that change is not the end. It is the sacred rhythm of life. And even in the darkness, there is always the promise of return, of illumination. Cancer does not seek applause for their resilience. They do not wear their suffering as a badge. Their strength is quiet, dignified, and often unseen. But it moves worlds. It changes destinies. Their healing is not loud, but it is seismic. Their emotional recovery is not performative, but it is profound. And when they love again, they do so not out of naivete, but out of choice. A conscious decision to keep their heart open in a world that has tried to close it. That is heroism. That is defiance. That is spiritual mastery. So the liar fades into the background, a character written out of Cancer's sacred story. And Cancer continues forward, guided not by bitterness but by lunar wisdom. They become a beacon to others who have been deceived, a living testament to the power of emotional truth, to the courage of vulnerability, to the indestructible spirit of one who has loved deeply, lost deeply, and risen even deeper. Their hatred of lies is not rooted in anger. It is rooted in reverence for truth. And in that reverence, they walk a path few have the strength to follow, leaving behind not just the lie, but the need to carry its weight ever again. There is a divine irony in the fact that Cancer, often perceived as the most fragile of the zodiac, possesses an emotional resilience that rivals the fiercest storms. While others may reduce lies to mere inconveniences or fleeting disappointments, for Cancer, deception slices through realms much deeper. It is not simply an affront to their ego or their plans. It is a violation of the sacred inner temple where they hold space for the people they love. That inner sanctuary, governed by intuition, compassion, and a lunar knowing that transcends time, is not built for just anyone. It is a space reserved for those who have been weighed and deemed worthy by the emotional gravity of the moon's child. A lie shakes the foundations of that sanctuary, but it does not collapse it. What many underestimate is that the emotional architecture of Cancer is forged not only from dreams and sentiments, but from ancestral strength. It is not soft because it is weak. It is soft because it does not need to be hard to be indestructible. When lies threaten the purity of their emotional core, something ancient awakens in them, a primal energy rooted in the wisdom of centuries. This is the moment when Cancer stops being the healer for others and becomes the guardian of their own truth. Unlike signs who may explode in fury or seek immediate retribution, Cancer turns inward. The withdrawal is misunderstood by those who have never known the power of silence. It is not retreat, it is recalibration. It is the act of drawing sacred boundaries with invisible ink that only the wise will notice. And in that silence, they listen to the whispering voice of their higher self, the voice that has always guided them even when others sought to mislead them. They reflect, they relive, they refeel, and in doing so, they extract wisdom from the poison, turning the venom of betrayal into the elixir of rebirth. Their hatred of lies is not born from control, but from clarity. Lies create chaos in a world that Cancer constantly strives to bring into emotional harmony. They are the soul who remembers birthdays, who saves notes written years ago, who sees meaning in moments others discard. A lie desecrates that meaning. It renders sacred memories into illusions. It turns love into strategy and connection into manipulation. And for a being ruled by the moon, which governs memory, rhythm, and the subconscious, that is an unspeakable crime. Yet even in that violation, Cancer does not lose themselves. They grieve, yes, but through the grief, they refine their essence, burning away naivety and emerging with a crystalline clarity no lie can ever penetrate again. The liar thinks they have fooled Cancer. What they do not see is the cosmic reckoning they have summoned. The moon governs karma through its cycles, and Cancer, as its child, understands that nothing goes unseen. Every lie spoken is etched in the tide. Every manipulation is recorded in the stars. Cancer's soul, tuned to these subtle cosmic movements, knows when to let go, when to wait, and when to rise. Their revenge is not in destruction. Their revenge is in becoming untouchable, in turning wounds into wisdom, in building a life so pure and purposeful that the liar becomes irrelevant in its light. To see a Cancer after they've overcome betrayal is to witness something transcendent. Their eyes carry the depth of 1,000 heartbreaks and the strength of surviving every single one. They do not become cynical. They become sovereign. They do not shut down. They shine brighter, but only for those who know how to see them. Their emotional gates become guarded not by walls, but by intuition. No mask passes undetected. No false promise gets past the sacred listening of their soul. They evolve into empaths who have bled, warriors who have cried, and queens and kings of their own emotional realm who bow to no one but truth. The story does not end with the lie. That is merely the turning point. The real tale begins when Cancer decides that they will no longer suffer for someone else's dishonesty. They turn their love inward, filling their own cup with the care they so freely gave. And as they rise, the same moon that once bore witness to their tears now bathes them in silver light, illuminating the path forward. They walk it with grace, with memory, and with a power so quiet it reshapes everything it touches. For the liar, Cancer was a mark, a target of emotional access. But for Cancer, the lie was a mirror, a catalyst, a sacred reminder of what they deserve and what they must never again allow. And in the end, while the deceiver remains tangled in their own web of illusion, Cancer walks free, crowned not in bitterness, but in the unshakable dignity of one who has faced the darkness, honored their pain, and chosen to shine anyway. There exists a dimension of Cancer's journey through betrayal that transcends the earthly realm and dances in the ethereal. This sign does not simply react on the physical plane. It processes every experience through the emotional, the psychic, and the ancestral. When deception wounds the heart of a Cancer, it is not just a rupture in this lifetime. It is a tremor that echoes back through generational lines, through karmic bonds and unspoken soul contracts. Their reaction is therefore never just personal. It is cosmic. It is the result of lifetimes of knowing, of loving too deeply, of being the emotional anchor for others while silently carrying storms within themselves. Cancer is one of the cardinal signs, and as such, it initiates great emotional change. While their reputation often leans toward the sentimental and nostalgic, few understand that these qualities are not signs of weakness. They are sources of profound magical power. Nostalgia for Cancer is not mere longing. It is sacred memory. Sentimentality is not clinging to the past. It is honoring the emotional truths that built them. So when a lie is introduced into this delicate system, it becomes an intrusion in a temple built of soul and sincerity. The betrayal does not merely stain the present. It attempts to corrupt the emotional architecture of everything that was shared. And Cancer, protectors of emotional memory, rise not just to defend themselves, but to preserve the sanctity of truth in love, in friendship, in loyalty. The moon, ever-shifting and cyclical, teaches Cancer that nothing stays the same, but everything leaves a mark. When they encounter lies, especially those masked in love, they begin to track the patterns. Patterns in behavior, in words, in energetic resonance. They are ruled not by linear thought but by spirals, by tides, by instinctual knowing. Over time, this pattern recognition becomes a second sight, a psychic compass that prevents them from being deceived again. And this evolution is not learned through textbooks or mentors. It is earned through pain transformed into power. The epic part of Cancer's growth is not just in how they survive, but in how they transmute. The water they are made of is not stagnant, it is alchemical. Pain does not simply dissolve within them. It is turned into wisdom. The tears they shed become sacred offerings to the moon itself, a purification that allows them to rise lighter, clearer, and more attuned to their divine path. Through betrayal, they refine their ability to discern soul truth from illusion. They begin to hear lies before they are even spoken. They start to feel the energetic tremble of dishonesty even behind the most polished smiles. This is not paranoia. It is lunar perception fully awakened. Many do not see the warrior spirit hidden within Cancer's nurturing nature. But it is there, fierce and formidable. It is the spirit of one who knows how to defend not with swords, but with unwavering emotional clarity. They will protect their peace like a tidal wave protects the sacred ocean depths. And once they decide that someone is unworthy of access to their heart, there is no storm that can force them open again. Their boundaries, once breached, are rebuilt stronger than stone. This is not bitterness, it is evolution. Even more powerful is their ability to continue loving after betrayal. Not because they forget, and certainly not because they are foolish, but because they choose not to allow darkness to define them. They allow themselves to be reshaped by the truth rather than destroyed by the lie. They come to understand that the lie revealed is a gift, a clearing, a divine severance of energies that were never in harmony with their soul's purpose. They begin to release with grace, not out of weakness but out of reverence for their own energetic frequency. They no longer chase closure or explanations. Their closure is found in the mirror of their own resilience. The most underestimated strength of Cancer is their regenerative emotional power. Others heal through action, through distance, through logic. Cancer heals by immersing in feeling until it becomes clear, until the fog lifts and the heart beats with its own sovereign rhythm again. They do not rush this process. They know that the moon takes its time to become full again, and so do they. But when they emerge, they are not who they were before. They are reborn through every cycle, through every wave, through every sacred shedding of illusions. They are stronger not despite their sensitivity, but because of it. In this way, Cancer becomes the emotional phoenix, not the firebird of myth, but the tidal phoenix, rising from sacred waters, cloaked in silver light, untouched by past illusions. Their intuition becomes not just a guide but a shield. Their compassion becomes a force field, radiating only for those who know how to honor it. They no longer rescue those who would drown them. They no longer offer warmth to hands that once struck. And yet they remain soft, because their softness is not for others to use. It is their divine power, their celestial offering, their moon-given gift. From this higher vantage point, Cancer moves forward. The lies fall away like shadows at dawn. The past becomes part of the legend, not the wound. And the future stretches before them like a sea reflecting the stars. Endless, shimmering, alive with possibility. Because the soul of Cancer, when awakened by truth and refined by fire, is unstoppable. They are not defined by betrayal. They are defined by the way they rise through it, again and again, until only the sacred remains. There is a mysterious force that emanates from Cancer's soul, a silent yet indomitable current that flows beneath their emotional surface like an underground river carving through stone. Few ever realize the magnitude of this inner force until they are cast from its warmth. The betrayal of a Cancer is not merely the loss of affection. It is the exile from a sanctuary woven from intuitive wisdom, ancestral memory, and a love that transcends the limitations of this world. What many fail to comprehend is that Cancer does not love in parts. They love in entirety, with a devotion that fuses spirit, mind, and body. When a lie pierces that sacred unity, it awakens not just disappointment, it awakens transformation. This transformation is not loud, nor does it seek revenge. It does not parade its awakening for the world to see. It unfolds in the silence of the soul, under the light of the moon, in the stillness of midnight reflections where truth cannot be denied. In this inner sanctum, Cancer begins to listen not to the voices of others, but to the ancient voice within, the one that speaks not in words, but in energy, in sensations, in pulses of lunar memory passed down from lifetimes before. Betrayal becomes the catalyst for a deeper integration of this inner truth. They no longer need to be told who someone is. They feel it. They no longer wait for masks to fall. They already see beneath them. This profound shift in perception alters everything. Cancer becomes more than a guardian of emotion. They become an embodiment of emotional sovereignty. No longer defined by others' treatment of them, they become the architects of their own emotional reality. The walls they build are not barriers. They are gates guarded by intuition and reinforced with discernment. They allow in only what resonates with their sacred frequency. What was once perceived as sensitivity becomes a refined sensor of truth, a power so precise that even the smallest vibration of deception cannot slip through unnoticed. There is also a deeper dimension to Cancer's relationship with betrayal that touches on their karmic role in the zodiac. As the fourth sign, Cancer holds the space of home, of origin, of the emotional foundation upon which all other experiences are built. When they are betrayed, it threatens the foundation they offer others. And so they do not just heal for themselves, they heal to restore the sacred space they hold for humanity. Their personal recovery becomes a ritual of cosmic significance. Every step toward emotional clarity they take sends ripples through the collective, teaching others through example that it is not only possible to feel deeply and still rise, it is divinely necessary. What was not previously spoken is how Cancer's pain becomes prophecy. Their emotional intelligence, once forged through fire, becomes a guiding light for others lost in darkness. They begin to channel their experiences not into walls, but into wisdom. Through storytelling, through silence, through the sheer presence of their healed heart, they teach others how to discern love from illusion, intuition from fear, truth from performance. They become emotional oracles not through theory, but through lived initiation. Their voice becomes an echo of the moon itself, gentle, rhythmic, ancient, undeniable. Those who lied to Cancer never truly escape the consequences, not because Cancer seeks vengeance, but because truth is a force of nature. Ruled by water, Cancer understands the inevitability of flow. What is unjust will be balanced. What is false will be revealed. Time for Cancer is not linear, it is cyclical. What is not resolved returns. What is not healed repeats. In this knowledge, Cancer finds peace. They need not force justice. They embody it. They become a living reminder that while love is infinite, access to it is earned. That while compassion is abundant, it is never to be mistaken for submission. And while forgiveness may be offered, reconciliation is not guaranteed. Eventually, Cancer learns that the lie was not a detour, it was a gate. A gate they had to pass through to access their own ascension. Without it, they may have stayed in the dream. With it, they awakened to their own worth. The disillusionment became sacred disintegration, tearing away all that was false so that what remained could only be truth. They no longer chase closure or apology. They no longer seek to understand the inner workings of those who chose deception. Their focus shifts entirely inward, toward self-honoring, self-respect, and soul truth. In the aftermath of betrayal, Cancer rises not with armor, but with essence. Not with a hardened heart, but with a clearer heart. Their sensitivity, once wounded, becomes sharpened into perception. Their compassion, once manipulated, becomes reserved for those who recognize its divine value. They no longer mourn what was lost. They exalt what was found within. And with each new lunar cycle, they ascend further into their purpose, carrying with them the strength of their tears, the clarity of their scars, and the fierce beauty of a soul who has walked through emotional hell and emerged carrying moonlight in their chest. Their journey becomes mythic, not the myth of a broken heart, but of a soul who cracked open to let the cosmos in. Cancer becomes a living testament to what it means to feel and still move forward, to love and still protect, to break and still build. And for those who come after, who find themselves in similar storms, Cancer becomes the lighthouse, not because they never knew darkness, but because they learned to become the light. There is an invisible lineage that runs through the heart of every Cancer, an emotional inheritance passed down not through words or blood, but through energetic memory, an ancestral knowing etched into their emotional DNA. This spiritual memory shapes their relationship with trust, truth, and betrayal in a way that transcends reason. When a lie is uncovered, it is not merely the present that trembles. It is the full weight of every emotional thread Cancer has ever woven, pulled suddenly taut with revelation. The pain is vast not because of fragility, but because Cancer has the extraordinary capacity to hold emotional multitudes. Their love contains history. Their silence holds volumes. Astrologically, Cancer is the guardian of the fourth house, the domain of roots, origin, and the private sanctum of the soul. This house does not deal with superficial exchanges. It governs the inner life, the deep heart, the place where the self meets the spirit. When someone lies to Cancer, they are not just crossing a line, they are violating a sacred space. That space is the hearth of the zodiac, the emotional womb of creation and care. And once it is defiled by dishonesty, the entire structure must be reevaluated. Cancer becomes both the mourner and the architect, grieving the collapse while preparing to rebuild with greater integrity and divine intention. The moon's influence imbues Cancer with cycles of emotional illumination. Each phase of lunar light reflects an inner state. The full moon magnifies truth. The waning moon clears illusions. The dark moon initiates stillness and regeneration, and the waxing moon births new strength. When Cancer is betrayed, these inner tides guide their metamorphosis. Unlike others who may force healing, Cancer honors the rhythm. They do not escape grief. They descend into it with reverence, knowing that even the darkest waters hold pearls. This descent is not weakness. It is alchemy. It is in the depths that Cancer discovers new layers of psychic power, emotional vision, and spiritual endurance. This profound ability to feel fully and heal cyclically makes Cancer a master of rebirth. Not the kind that is celebrated with grand gestures or immediate transformation, but the quiet, enduring kind, the rebirth of identity, the redefinition of boundaries, the reestablishment of sacred values. What emerges from this emotional crucible is a version of Cancer who no longer bends to be understood, who no longer compromises their knowing for the comfort of others. They become luminous with truth. They learn to identify the frequency of dishonesty before it takes shape. They sense imbalance before words are spoken. Their emotions are not chaotic. They are divinely tuned instruments of discernment. From an epic lens, Cancer is the emotional guardian of the zodiacal journey. Each sign plays a role, and Cancer's is not passive. It is the protector of sacred emotional truth. Just as Leo guards the fire of the heart and Scorpio holds the keys to transformation, Cancer safeguards emotional safety and intuitive integrity. When they are betrayed, it is not simply a personal wound, it is a cosmic disturbance. But it is also a summons, a call to rise, not just for themselves, but for all those who carry the weight of emotion in a world that often disregards it. They rise for every soul who has been gaslit, doubted, or made to feel too much. Their comeback is not just survival, it is a declaration that emotion is sacred, that intuition is truth, and that betrayal only sharpens their divine role. This sharpening gives Cancer a new posture in the world. They become watchful, not suspicious, discerning, not cold. Their warmth remains, but it is no longer offered without calibration. They learn that protecting their peace is not selfish, it is sacred stewardship. They no longer shrink to fit into places where their depth is unwelcome. They no longer silence their knowing to avoid discomfort. They move forward with a quiet might, grounded in emotional mastery, guided by the moon's eternal wisdom. The lie that was meant to diminish them instead unlocks a hidden chamber within, the realm of the ancient healer, the lunar priestess, the emotional sovereign. This is the Cancer who no longer walks with their heart exposed but still radiates love, whose softness becomes strategic, whose vulnerability is no longer a doorway for harm but a shield of transparency. They are not impenetrable, they are inviolable. Their emotions do not make them prey, they make them prophetic. And in this heightened state of being, Cancer does something extraordinary. They forgive not always the person but the experience. They understand that the lie was a fork in the road, an initiation that revealed their own strength. They begin to bless the storm for delivering them to new shores. They stop retelling the story of the betrayal and instead speak the story of the rising. They stop circling the wound and instead build temples around the wisdom gained. And they become lighthouses, steady, bright, unmoved by crashing waves, guiding others who feel lost in the tides of deception. Their emotional legacy becomes one of strength through softness, power through presence, protection through perception. They are no longer the ones who suffer quietly. They are the ones who endure with grace, transform with courage, and lead others into emotional sovereignty by the quiet authority of their light. The lie, once a curse, becomes the crucible, and Cancer, forged in moonlight and truth, becomes a legend not for the pain they endured, but for the spirit they refused to let die. There is a sacred paradox at the heart of Cancer's nature that becomes fully illuminated in the face of betrayal. This sign is not only the guardian of home and memory, but also the silent warrior of the zodiac. Ruled by the moon, Cancer is capable of cradling the deepest human vulnerabilities, while simultaneously possessing a spiritual armor forged through cycles of inner death and rebirth. This paradox is often misjudged, especially by those who mistake emotional depth for emotional dependence, or who confuse softness with naivety. But when Cancer is confronted with deception, particularly from those they have nourished with loyalty, something timeless stirs within them. It is not rage. It is not bitterness. It is remembrance, an awakening of ancient resilience rooted in lunar wisdom and soul history. This remembrance is not intellectual. It is vibrational. It vibrates through the bones, through the heart space, through the etheric memory of every emotional betrayal ever endured. Cancer does not need to be told what has happened. They feel it in their dreams, in the sudden ache in their chest, in the subtle withdrawal of their own warmth. What many fail to recognize is that Cancer's connection to the moon grants them access to subconscious realms most fear to enter. They are not only empaths. They are spiritual sentinels of the invisible world, guardians of unseen truths. Lies cannot hide from a Cancer's knowing for long. They may allow illusions to linger momentarily, not out of blindness, but out of sacred patience, to observe, to confirm, to understand the full pattern before choosing their path forward. The revelation of a lie, then, is not a collapse, it is a cosmic alignment. It is the moment when Cancer ceases to protect others at the cost of their own clarity. It is the moment when the veil lifts, and the sacred protector turns their gifts inward. The one who once created emotional shelter for others becomes their own sanctuary. And in doing so, they withdraw with purpose, not in retreat, but in reclamation. In that withdrawal, Cancer begins the great healing. Not the surface kind that seeks distraction, but the soul-deep kind that reconfigures identity, intuition, and sacred boundaries. They do not merely heal to forget, they heal to transform. They become a new embodiment of their archetype, the nurturer who now nurtures themselves with the same reverence once reserved for others. This transformation brings with it a new kind of vision, one that is not just intuitive but prophetic. Cancer begins to sense the energetic signature of deception before it arrives. They read rooms like scriptures. They decode silence. They understand when someone's energy does not match their words. And with this refined inner compass, they stop negotiating with misalignment. They stop tolerating what wounds them. They stop shrinking to maintain harmony. They recognize that true emotional safety does not require self-sacrifice. It requires self-sovereignty. Astrologically, this is when Cancer steps fully into the evolved expression of their sign. No longer the moonchild trapped in emotional tides, they become the moon itself, ever-shifting yet ever-present, reflecting light in darkness, illuminating what others fear to see. Their emotions are not storms to be weathered. They are messages from the divine. And in this awareness, they stop apologizing for feeling deeply. They stop hiding their intuition for the sake of others' comfort. They become the oracle, the wise one, the one who trusts their own perception over external appearances. The liar may believe they've succeeded when Cancer says nothing. But silence from a Cancer is not weakness. It is the prelude to liberation. They no longer need confrontation to validate their knowing. They no longer seek apologies that come too late or ring hollow. They rise through grace, and they let go with finality. Their forgiveness is not always expressed aloud. It is offered inward, as a blessing to themselves. A choice to no longer carry what was never theirs to hold. This is where the epic truly begins. Because Cancer, now free from illusion, steps into a life designed by truth. Their energy becomes magnetic only to those who resonate with authenticity. Their love becomes a blessing received only by the brave. Their space becomes sacred ground, reserved for those who walk in integrity. The betrayal becomes not a detour, but a divine redirection, a necessary shedding of false attachments to make space for destiny. From this vantage point, Cancer no longer fears betrayal, because they know their worth cannot be diminished by another's deception. They have become too aligned with their higher self, too attuned to their soul frequency, to ever again be caught in the snare of sweet-sounding lies. They do not chase, they do not beg, they radiate, they attract, they build. And what they build this time is unshakable, because it is founded on the unbreakable truth of who they have become. In this way, Cancer becomes a legend, not for their pain but for their transformation, not for how they were broken, but for how they turned those fractures into constellations, how they mapped a new emotional universe from the ruins of deception. Their tears, once seen as weakness, are now the waters that baptize them into their higher path. Their scars become lunar runes etched in spirit, symbols of everything they've survived, and everything they're destined to inspire. They walk now not as the wounded, but as the initiated, as the healed healer, as the light that cannot be dimmed.